Hello, my friends, and welcome to the NEWSPASTE podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. And I am here with a man who I've spoken to on a couple of occasions before. We have the same sort of um, uh, research topics as our favorites, really. Fight against globalism, the reasons why it exists, both um, physical and esoteric to an extent. And it's Jacob. Do I say Jacob Nordangård or do I say Jacob Nordangård?
Well, if you if you pronounce it in the right way in Swedish, you say Jacob Nordangård.
Jacob, Jacob,
Jacob.
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 Okay, that's good. I like.
But you don't have to do that. You can just call me Jacob or whatever.
Okay, yeah, I'm the
totally
same.
okay.
Some people are very particular about what they're called. I'm like, you can call me Thingy if you want, as long as you've got a point behind it. We're having a conversation, and you're relatively polite, and you're buying me drinks, and you're buying me a meal, and you're massaging my feet. You can call me whatever you want. Right, we've spoken before, but this is the first time you're coming on the NEWSPASTE podcast, and so a load of people will not know your work. And let's go back to the beginning a little bit. Where were you born? Were you born where you are now?
I was born in Jönköping in the southern part of Sweden. But I moved there, I lived there until I was 14 years old, moved to another part of Sweden, a city called Katrineholm, and then I moved again to the city I live in now, that is Norrköping, Sweden's Manchester. It's an industrial town, textile industry. It was based on this very much. So.
How's their football team?
Yes, and we have a football team as well. IFK Norrköping.
Do you support football over there?
I'm not very. I'm not. The thing is, I choose between sport and music, and I choose music. So.
You see how you always chose playing guitar while watching football. That's So you've always been in Sweden then?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's it like growing up in Sweden? Because we from the rest of the world, we see it as really cold. We see this is how racist we are, really. We see snow and Vikings, and that's it basically. So how true is that? Is that what you see as well?
Well, during winter time, we have snow, but actually now we don't have snow in southern part of Sweden. So it's always in the northern parts, always snow. Not in the summer, of course, but during winter time. And the southern parts could be some, depending on what year, we can have a lot of snow and no snow whatsoever. And for the Viking bit, you don't see any Vikings running around doing berserk anymore. But of course, it's a part of the Swedish cultural heritage. So
you get taught a lot about that in school.
Vikings? No, we don't. Actually, it's very little about Swedish heritage nowadays, and it's because of it used to be. But it came a big change in Swedish education and politics, and we became internationalists instead.
That in the 70s and 80s?
Yes, exactly.
Because seems I look at a lot of education systems because I'm looking into young leadership courses and etc. And when you look around, you realize that in about 1970s, 80s, and onwards, they started to take out the histories of nations the proper history, the
Yeah.
history that makes you feel connected and part of your local community rather than a global community. They start to take that out of the curriculum. And so I do say to a couple of people, I've said to a couple of people that I remember being about, and I was about 5 years old. We were about 5, 6 years old. I'm in the second class in school, and the teacher said to us, "We're changing the way we teach you now. Instead of teaching you about, and this was due to a curriculum change, instead of teaching you about Druids, about ancient Britain, about the Roman invasion, and things like that, we're going to teach you about kings and queens." And in a sense, what they did is, by inserting kings and queens, they inserted dominance over our mind and what they were teaching us. We're constantly thinking about being ruled and that these people are so great and important. It's kind of like the worship in celebrity rather than understanding our roots. And also they said that they were taking out things about Roman history and stuff. And I think that's partially taking philosophy. Did you think the same? What was your experience growing up, schooling? Do you have that same experience? Because you're about the same age as me. Did you have that same experience where you felt like there was a big chunk missing out of history?
Yes, it was a lot about kings and queens in Swedish history as well. So it was a lot of to learn about what year did Gustav II Adolf die in the Battle of Lützen. 1632, and I know, and our King Charles the 12th, 1718. He died in Fredrikshall. That's the kind of history lessons I had during the early years, but I think it then changed to show another side of history, and gotten away with Sweden as a country, and more talking about there was a lot of propaganda for United Nations and this kind of global cooperation, and it was like we had a United Nations Day at school, and it's a lot of these things happening, and so that is one thing that changed, I think, with exercises in knowing exactly when a king is born and died, and so on, and and we didn't really go back to any. I don't think we ever talked about as a when I was young and during the early years in school about the Vikings and so on.
That is crazy. I find that amazing.
Yeah.
Before that change, I remember I was told I was really young. I was really young, and I remember the thing I remember most was learning about Druids and Stonehenge, and then everything changed, and we were told this thing, and then we started learning about all the rest of this stuff. And it always remained in my head. I really want to understand. That's the unknown history. As humans, especially inquisitive minds, they tend to be drawn to the things you don't know rather than the things that you do know. And I find it amazing when you say that to me, because Vikings, everywhere else in the world, Vikings are some of the most interesting and emotive sort of drivers of storylines as well. You've got there's epics, there's Scandinavian epics, there's all sorts of history there. There's all sorts of philosophy that come out in the stories. It's amazing to me that being in a place where that was all happening, and you don't get taught it in school. And how is it like a dirty secret over there then, the Vikings?
No, I don't think it's a dirty secret. It's just not, but we didn't talk that much about it, and not the Uh, I mean the religious part of it either. I mean it comes from being in a Protestant country, and so it's like when I was in school in the 70s, it was still a lot of doing with the Christian heritage and Protestantism, and it was just 10 years after that it was it was Christendom we learned in school, not religion, and it was not a part of a curriculum to have these things with the Vikings and well some. I eventually learned some of it, of course, because I was very interested in history, but it was very uh, and if you talked about the Viking Age, it was often about how brutal they were and how they invaded other countries, and it was not in a way that would make us proud of something. It
Oh,
was just
I say something opposite.
yeah,
From my study of European history, there is nothing more important in our development in Western Europe than what happened with the Vikings. Rollo being installed as like a Duke of Normandy is one
yeah,
of the biggest moments in Western history. I doubt that the rest would have unraveled like it has. That to an extent the constant thought of globalization would maybe be there to the extent it is now, unless that moment had happened. For a lot of people who don't know, William the Conqueror's great grandfather was, or great grandfather, I can never remember which one it is, was King Rollo, who was given the land by the Frankish kings, Normandy, to appease them and say, hey, stop raiding our coasts. Without the Vikings raiding the coasts, they suddenly they had nothing to do. They settle there, to marry into the royal families, and it led to this vicious couple of generations down the line, this vicious man, William the Conqueror, who was
mm.
trained in the Viking ways, had this Viking spirit of wanting to raid and raid cleverly, like tactics of moving in, building a post on the coast, attacking from there, defending, and being able to run away as quickly as possible if needs be. That was all down to the Viking blood, and that led to the Norman conquest of England, the kings and queens of England, the colonization of most of the world and the British Empire. Would you not agree that that's maybe one of the most important?
Yes, yes, it's important, and when you look into it, it's just amazing. And before the Vikings, we had the Goths. I'm actually from Östergötland. That's the East Gothland. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stories about that the Goths originated from Sweden and went on to conquer during the Roman Empire and the last days of the Roman Empire. So it's a lot of things that has happened from this region that is not very much spoken about these days. But it's
Amazing.
and we have Russia as well. I mean, Russia. The name comes from it's taken from the Swedish Vikings that went to Russia. It's the land of the Rus, the people from the Roslagen, and that's as a part of the Stockholm archipelago, that's called Roslagen. And so it was the Rooshmen, the people that with take these ships, Roosmen,
Mhm.
and so that's the name that became Russia, Ryssland, the land of the Rus. So it's very interesting to see that it has come from this region.
It's so fascinating how this sort of front line between different nations, or at least a different feeling of different people, has happened and has evolved over time. But I think of, the Romans trying to, defeat the barbarian hordes of the northern armies and etc. And there's loads of conquest, but they kept however much any army tries to take northern territory in Europe, it always ends in winter.
Yeah.
So they get stuck. But I suppose we're going to talk about globalism today, and it's something that the Scandinavian nations have been, or the people of Scandinavian nations have always iconically opposed and resisted such methods of control from outside. And they've done it really well, sometimes by adopting other people's cultures, sometimes by coming to compromises like what happened with Normandy and the Norman kings. But they've always managed to oppose it. And it feels like it's different now. It feels like that line where maybe the Roman army was fighting the Northern army, they were moving up through Europe. Now that really is the line of the Rus, the people of Russia, and the people who live on the other side of the border to that. And since then, since World War, well, at least World War One, but maybe we can go back 100 years, maybe we can go back 150, maybe 200 years. That has become the main front line. So, what's it like politically where you are now in Sweden? Is it that you've brought up with this tension of knowing that the danger is across the border, and is that what you're given when you're young?
You mean with Russia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with
Yeah,
those big, dangerous
always.
threats.
Because we have been very close and we have fought a lot of wars with Russia. The most wars we have had with Denmark, actually. But because of the regional power, who will be the leader in Scandinavia. So, but the big threat has always been from Russia, and Russia took half the Swedish kingdom in 1809, and that was the really hard blow because Finland had been Swedish for like 700 years. It was very it wasn't a colony. It was the same country, and the Finns were represented in the Swedish in Stockholm, and
How
so
do
it's
Swedish people feel about Finnish people? Do they just see them as cousins, brothers, or do they see them as still the same people? Like,
well, it's a complicated situation, I would say, with the Finnish, because we have a Swedish minority in Finland, and this minority, they were the upper class in Finland, and they have been in the positions of power since it was a part of Sweden, and the Finns were not represented in the same way. So it so the Finnish speaking people, they have had some problems with Sweden, but it's still a kind of, I mean, we have lived together, so uh, it's like you are close, but with the closest people, you can also have the most kind of hate as well. So it's both love and hate in this. And but if you look into to Finland, and they have copied a lot of what we have done in Sweden, and
copycat.
they when they became an old country, they took essentially the Swedish constitution and made it their own. And so it has always been this, and we are very close nowadays as well. The first when we have a new prime minister, the first visit goes to Helsinki, and so it's a very close. But we have had this, and if I should continue with the Russian threat, and so Finland were our buffer zone, and Russia took that buffer zone, and they placed their men very close to the Swedish border, and we also had the big battle in Poltava in the 1709, and that was a hard blow. It was essentially the end of the Swedish Empire.
Mm.
And
What was happening
Sweden
around
was
them.
devastated after this, and we became more or less a powerless region in Scandinavia, with little influence and the need for support from other countries, and dependent on alliances with others. We couldn't. Before that, we were our own, and we had beaten the Danes and built this empire, and then even began colonizing the North America. We had a colony in North America, actually, in New Sweden,
Know that?
for a couple of years.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Know about
so yeah, essentially at the same time when we have the England going there, and Netherlands going there, Sweden was the third country that had a colony, but the Netherlands conquered that, and then the Englishmen conquered the Dutch
What can you do with
possessions.
English? As a Welshman, I know those English next door, they're terrible folk. Terrible. You can't
Yeah.
trust them at all. They're all Normans. So really they've all got Viking blood. That's their problem.
Yeah.
All goes in a big circle. I mean, I always find like examining, because we are so in our own little boxes, in our own little world,
Yeah.
taught in our school, and we get taught history of our country, and we get taught it from a perspective which suits the ruling elite. The ruling elite decided in the 60s and 70s that they needed to use every method within education to kind of brainwash people into becoming a more subservient class, while training leadership groups outside, and having a different standard of education for them. So I think sometimes what we're doing is just exploring what leadership contenders know about history. For these guys, it's all probably second. It's easy to know international history, and that helps you understand how to incorporate globalism. I find that very interesting. So where you went to school in Sweden? Did you go to university then? Did you study in university, or
Yes, I did. That's the reason I came to the city I live now, in Norrköping. So I started to study culture and media production.
Mhm.
I was interested in I wanted to become a journalist, or working with radio, and doing productions. I'm very creative as a person, so that's I try to find something that I could make my dreams getting fulfilled.
Yeah, yeah. Has it been has that been the route you took? Did you do the right course in university?
Yes, very much so.
Very lucky.
And I loved it these years. It was one in 97 to 2001, and it was a very good time to be at the university. They had actually a lot of money during that time, and the program was totally new. No teacher really knew what we were doing. So we had so if you came into that program at that time with a will of your own, you could do and achieve a lot, and that's what I did. because I really had I had a vision, and I want to do this. And I had worked for a couple of years before I went to university. So this is a part of uh, we had this big crisis in Sweden in the early 90s with it was a big all the industries moved out of Sweden, and unemployment was huge. So they had to do something. So they took all those who hadn't applied to go to university. They thought, now is the time. How can we get rid of the unemployment? We put them in the universities. So, but with a lot of money and a lot of it was very good for me at that time. I was like 28 or something when I started, and it was great. And so I learned a lot of this things that I mean, still are doing actually, because I like to combine the thing with program. It was like that the intention was to take read scientific papers and doing scientific study, and make it into a project, make it take for example theoretical perspectives, and put them into to a case, something that you study. It was a lot of what do you say, when you study people and cultures and so on, and you present this.
Yeah.
So we presented. It had a lot to do with sociology as well. So we made these projects. Maybe kind of one time it was a radio show, and another time it was a web page, and I mean the internet was very new at the time, and also doing a film. So it was very, very funny and creative, but it was like taking these very hard to understand scientific literature and make it in a format that was easy to access for ordinary people. So that's what I learned, what I learned from that time, and it was great. And because I had this sides in me as well, I wanted to become a musician from the beginning. That was
Same here.
yeah. So that's why I didn't start at the university when I was 19. It took some years because I started a band, and I just had a job going to get money to fund the equipment and so on, and
equipment and weed smoking. I know.
yeah, a lot of that. But the musical career didn't work out as planned at that time. But it has always been with me, and it's always been an important part of me. The artistic side, the creativity, and then I have this analytical side, reading a lot. I've done that since I was a child, very, very thorough, very interested in a lot of topics, history, psychology, and philosophy, and so on. So it was natural just to mix these things with doing this program, with being a producer and taking. So that's why I have since when I did my PhD, for example, I published this doctoral thesis together with. I have this doctoral thesis. Here it is.
Oh, awesome! What a brilliant cover! I can
Order Up Cow.
Yeah, there's a lot to see there.
Yeah, it's
Describe
painted.
The cover to the people who are listening.
What?
Describe the cover to the people who are listening?
Yeah, okay. It's a kind of it's kind of complicated, but in the middle you see the power of the Pope and the kings, and
Mm.
they are fighting for the heart, for the love, and trying to control humanity.
And that's still what we're
Which,
going through right now.
yeah, exactly, and it's a lot of symbolism on this cover, and when this was released, this cover is made by an Irish artist,
Mhm.
Elaine Iguana. She is very good painter, and she has done a lot of covers for doom metal albums.
Yeah.
So that's why I came in contact with her. And together with this, I released a little promo with my band, Wardenclyffe. So on the second inside, I had this album.
You
So and
can't
the
stop from merging your talents.
yeah, so that was the thing. I wanted to do something different, and I also thought that the university world was so boring, and um
You're right.
really boring.
Really
Fuck, yeah.
super boring. I got
Yeah,
myself boring.
so, but I loved a lot of the things with it, but I didn't like I mean, very stiff occasions when you sit at these long tables and you're dressed in uh, and this very much this student culture. I didn't really enjoy that. So I was very much more into uh, the old metal community where I
Yeah,
fit
yeah, yeah.
into.
I
So
can dig that. I was a big fan of metal as well when I was younger, and I didn't go to university because I kept setting things on fire and stuff. So they were very oh they were very woke
yeah, yeah.
woke to fires, which is probably no. I was a bit of a naughty boy, so I never. But I always wanted to, and I always saw it as a thing where if I could go to university, they'll give me the thing, they'll give me the knowledge. But you do learn now that years on, I look back, I see all of other people's experience in university. You really have to take the knowledge and that you only take the knowledge you want to take most of the time. I think that's reflected in what you say as well, because of that love of you have that music knowledge, you have the stuff that's involved with that, and it really mixes and merges in with your work, which is something I appreciate and I feel regularly when I'm doing this sort of work. So what did you do when you left university? Did you go straight into journalism? Did you want to instantly become a writer? Did you go into media? What was your route to where you are now?
Yes. So I was for 4 years. I studied this culture and media program, but then I got because I didn't get a job as a journalist, but I was very interested in. I had written a thesis about city planning. I was very interested in the cultural heritage of cities and had asked myself a lot of questions about how the cityscapes had changed and how they had tear down the old buildings in my city and destroyed a lot of the life that was there before. So then that was the topic of it. And after I was finished, I got a job at construction company, a developer of apartments, uh, as working with information and building their website. I mean, it was a very new thing at that time. Very few had these websites, so I got this job and worked with. Because this company they were also wanted to bring a better architecture to the world, and so I thought it was kind of interesting. and to so that's so I combined this with one of my other interests, and that's old buildings and so on. And but it was a very problematic working place, I found out, because construction companies and morality and how they it's I have been involved in with music and record companies. And record companies, they don't have any morality, or didn't have, and it was a lot of kind of almost criminal activities. And the same was for this industry with construction. A lot of bad stuff going on, and I had a boss that was really into screwing people off. It was
When you say, wait a minute, screwing people, do you mean having sex with them, or
no. It's just well, he did as well.
yeah, but how?
He had like a couple he had a couple of girls in every city. I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
But he conducted a business that it was immoral, I think, and so he fooled people.
Yeah, I spent I had a load of experience like that very early. I was in hotels though, but I went into like five-star hotels, and we had one ops manager. I'll say his name out loud, Patrick Lemegre, and he used to like buns would fall on the floor, and he'd pick them up and dust them off and put them onto the tray and stuff. And
Yeah.
and yeah, he claimed to want perfection at the same time. It's like, well, you can't have perfection if you've got hair on your buns. That's that's one of the things. But no, it is true enough. I mean, you go into the workplace and you meet tyrants and the like. How long did you keep doing that for then?
A couple of years. The thing was, my boss was also an alcoholic and very, very deep into it. So it eventually got problematic with him turning up drunk at important meetings with people from the city council and so on. So
I like it.
and they had
Yeah.
these prestige projects in cities, and Swedish authorities were involved, and they got a lot of money for subsidizing ecological buildings and so on, which was totally bullshit, by the way. It's just a way to get money for these big projects. So I saw a lot of these things going on with this facade of being this responsible construction company. We're sustainable and so on. But it was all about money, and how much money can we get from this all the time. So I got really, really tired of it, and sometimes people and other. I mean, when we were building new apartments, sometimes the people involved, it was, I mean, subcontractors were involved in this, and he didn't pay them. So some, I remember phone calls coming, and there was some angry man. If we don't get paid, we're going to go to this place and take everything that we have put there back. And I say, there's people living there now. You can do that. But I got so tired of this, and didn't want to defend this kind of behavior. So it was, no, I can't work here anymore. I have to quit this. And my boss was. So it was a lot of days when he wasn't even at work, because so nobody was there to actually give me anything what I was supposed to do today, or what. So I started to do other things at work, and then find an escape plan. So one day I just had enough of it. I just quit, and I went to university again.
Yeah, unfortunately, alcoholics need to fuel their lifestyle, and their lifestyle is very expensive, and that means you have to rip people off because you have to put in a lack of effort and get as much back as possible. So
Yeah.
this is one of the things I've had. I've had alcoholic bosses and stuff in the past, and one the first person to ever employ me in hotels was an alcoholic. That's why I got a job.
Yeah.
No one else would have employed me. I walked into the interview in the state. It didn't matter. I mean, it gave me an opportunity, so I'm not going to complain in that sense. But I've seen, I mean, I grew up in a family who grew up in pubs. So
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
a lot of that, and we've had bits of it. I mean, my dad drank way too, couldn't stop. Goes round it. It's hard. You went, so where from there to now? Where did you go next? Then what did you do?
Well, I was sitting at my office one day, and I started to thinking about other things to do, and I was very much into to city planning, and this is how things just evolve, and you get into things in a way that you couldn't think of. Uh, so I was sitting at my office, and I read in the paper that they were going to build a shopping mall outside the city, and I was kind of upset of this because I have written this paper about they have tear down the old city just to build an autostrada into the middle of the city center, and so people could shop there. And then now when they finished with this. Now we're going to build a shopping mall outside the city, and so it's for me. I got upset and angry, and so I was wanted to write an opinion in the local newspaper, and then I was started to think about arguments and on why this is a bad thing to have a shopping mall, and as I mean it's you have to drive to that place and so on. But one thing was I just suddenly thought about when I was in school. They talked about oil running out in like 30 years. But wait a minute. Hasn't it passed? Isn't it 40 years ago or something like that? When I heard that, so I had to check it out. So was in 2004, I think. Yes, it was. So I went into internet and started investigating and find out about the peak oil theory, and that's the thing that made me find a new path in life because I read all these scary reports about oil. It will run out now, and the whole society will collapse within a decade. And we are so dependent on oil that the society won't function. So I started at the university with this in mind. Is this true? What about oil? Is it? Are these people? Are these scientists right? And I became obsessed by this, and I bought a lot of books and started to investigate this, and I wrote a couple of papers at the university. I ended up at studying geography at my old university, and uh, and actually it was great being back in at the university again because I had a mission.
Mhm.
I wanted to find out, and this led me into to study.
That's what university should be for, in my
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you realize what you need to work out, what you need to understand. We're never ready by 18, 19, 20. And
yeah, and that's as long as I was an ordinary student, this was all right. I could do this. Um, but then after a couple of years, like 4 years, I studied geography, and I went into studying, do we have alternatives to oil, alternative energy? Is it possible to change into another energy system? What I found out was no, it's not feasible. You can do that, and in Sweden it was a lot of talk about using biofuels and biomass from all. I mean, the Swedish forests are huge, and so I planned to do this, and I made a geographical study about this, and it's just no, it doesn't work. You have to have an economy run on oil to do this. So this was impossible, and this also led me into study of climate change narrative.
Oh,
Yeah.
and would you say that was the nail in the coffin of you potentially being a normie? Would that be the moment where when you study something like climate change, the narrative behind climate change?
Yes, it's changed a lot. It changed everything for me. I mean, the thing when I was studying peak oil, I was kind of a loner at that time as well, because everybody was they started to talk about the climate at that time, but I thought, I mean, climate change is for real, and we humans are responsible. That was natural thing to think at that time.
Was there with
And
you? Was there with you?
yeah, but then I made a study in one of my thesis. I wanted to know, have a background on climate change, on how would climate change affect the output of biomass. Would it be a change in this? So I wanted to know the science behind this, and because I'm actually raised in a journalist family, so it's always been important to have have both sides of a scientific issue. So I started to investigating Al Gore and these people, and the other side as well,
Yeah.
and that shocked me. Totally. It was just what? And I also find out that where is the science? I
Mm.
can't find it. I've been studying at the university. I've learned what the scientific method is and how you do it. And this isn't science. Uh, this is predictions. This is using modeling. And I couldn't.
Oh,
This
modeling.
it's not science.
Oh,
There's no proof. There's no evidence. There's
art.
nothing.
It's art. You
Yeah,
models are art. You
yeah.
accept that.
And shit in, shit out in these
Yeah,
models.
yeah.
So
Ferguson in, Ferguson out. That's
so it shocked me. So I had to and the thing is, I was actually in the Green Party at that time. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yes,
I can see
because
you in a meeting slowly edging out the door, or with a hook slowly reaching across the stage to just whoop you off.
yeah. So was in the Green Party a lot of to do with the peak oil that I was convinced of would come, and we had to change
And those
society
pretty
and so on.
girls, they're so pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was into this, and then I found out there's no science behind climate, and the party I was in, they were they have begun to talk about this a lot. It was a non-issue before. When I actually applied to be in the party, there was a non-issue, but when Al Gore came and the Al Gore effect, and
Oh,
everyone there talked about the climate, and at the same time I found out this is not a deal. This is just it's crackpot science. This is has nothing to do with
this is
reality.
drawing the graph and then drawing a big line all the way up.
Yeah, so I went into everything, and it was just what is this? And I had to, and at the exactly same time I had applied to be a doctoral student, a PhD student, and the assistant professor that was responsible for this program for PhDs. Yeah, I mean, he thought I was perfect, that I had been a member of the Green Party, and also scared for this thing with peak oil and so on. A perfect student. And when I found out this, I had to talk to him. So I just approached him, and I sent some links to him, and said, "Wait a minute, where is the science? It doesn't seem to be correct. This, have you actually looked into this?" And it was like, "We trust the science. It doesn't matter. It have to be this way." He was a careerist, and he became very high up in the hierarchy at the university
Going to get us
because of climate.
gentlemen's club.
Yeah. So he didn't. That didn't matter if the proofs I gave him. He didn't want to read this because he had become the director of this climate policy center. And these people were, yeah, they got a lot of funding, a lot of money, and
Oh, they do. Oh, they do.
we had great parties. I mean, they always were represented at these big climate meetings. We took the airplanes to Mexico, and they had these wild parties and orgies, kind of.
The Keep Your Mouth Shut committee has the best parties around.
Yeah. So it's a lot of very hypocritical, and they so he wasn't interested in what I was saying. But it changed a lot for me, and this led me to actually investigate the background to how the climate issue had begun.
That's basically starting fires like I was doing. They don't like you in university if you start fires. That's
Yeah.
So you became a fire starter. What year is this now?
So in late 2006, I found out climate science is not a big problem, and I came in contact with climate skeptics that told me how it really had been, and still a member of the Green Party. And in early 2008, I began at this PhD program. And at that time, it became very, very hard for me because it had opened up my mind for a lot of new information, and
I look like this when I think about that sort of stuff because I went through this same process.
Yeah,
on many different subjects, and it's like you almost wince now, and you feel like you're gonna get hit in the face anytime now. I'm about to be hit in the face by a load of angry people, a mob of people.
Well, I was basically in the rabbit hole, and because if you start to question one thing, it's just if this isn't the right thing, and this is like a big lie, what else have they been lying about? So that's what's happened for me. It's just opened up a lot, and I question a lot of things that I thought was real before. I mean, I've always been a skeptic since early age, but this was another thing. It was a big thing, and a kind of a personal crisis for me as well. So, and I gone through a lot of things on a personal plane as well, with divorce at the same time. But a lot of the things it has to do with this, because it's changed me so much that I mean, friends and so on couldn't cope with it.
Yeah.
But I had found something that I thought was important and that made me survive. And I also found actually I had a supervisor at the university that actually believed in me and supported me all the way. So that was a big thing, because when I ended up in this PhD program with and suddenly don't I didn't believe in the sustainable development dogma anymore. I didn't believe in climate change. Uh, so so it was very hard, because everyone writing these papers and at that time, but all my colleagues, they were totally into it. And then for me to present another perspective on this, it was no, you had to I had to have another strategy and have a very objective outlook in order not to upset anyone. But at the same time, it was, if you mention the other side, it was like when you have to be on the other side, even if you just give a balanced view. But and that's one of the things I think changed at universities at that time as well. But it's like you have to have this leftish view. If you can't have another view, because if so, you're the enemy and you're the problem. And but they had a very big difficulties with me, because I was from the Green Party, and I've been an environmentalist. I have said all the right things, so they couldn't say that I was a part of this right wing and all these neoliberal think tanks that were talking against climate change narrative at that time. So I wasn't the typical. I wasn't the typical skeptic, but it got problematic, and a very hard time for me during this time as a PhD student. I wasn't as free as I was before. I felt a big more pressure on me to deliver the right result.
In that course, did you have the supportive supervisor?
Not at first. At first, I had this assistant professor that became a professor that I talked about before, the head of the Climate Policy Center, a careerist. A careerist. He just wanted me to. He said to me, I think you should write articles for scientific magazines." Not a monography, not a whole book, because the difference is, if you write this, I've written a monography. That's a whole book about it. It's not based on articles. But if you have scientific articles, you usually do this, that you have your supervisors as a co-author. So they get citation. They get points. If I have a couple of PhD students that they supervise, these students will supply them with these articles that they don't really have to do anything on. They just are co-authors, but they will get higher up in the academic hierarchy. That's how it works. So he had like 8 PhD students writing articles, and he got his name in every one of them. And because of that, he could make a quick career. And then I had my main supervisor was also, he was not a careerist in that way, but he was more left leaning in thinking, and he had his own stubborn way and wanted the PhDs to more or less be begging for his support all the time. And I was a free thinker and more independent going. And he was very hard on the things that I was writing about. And I never felt that it was good enough. So after 2 years, I changed to this supervisor that I had during my
Oh,
geography
good.
studies. And he supported me. I got a new main supervisor that also was pragmatic and helpful.
Yeah.
So I got what I needed in the end and could finish this work
It's
because
so terrible how this sort of establishment ego, this establishment linked ego, uh,
yeah,
is systematically keeps cannot control itself, has to project out, has to force itself upon other people, and cannot give a different. What I find interesting, we are from areas of study which are not popular, not due to them being relevant. They're not popular because they're focused away from, they're avoided, they're pushed to the side, and I am supportive of anybody learning anything. So I'm
yeah,
supportive of the other side learning crap science if they
mm,
want, or crap history if they want, and then we can discuss it. But then
yeah.
often on the other side, they're just not supportive of anybody learning. It's much more authoritarian. Did you feel that's what was happening? It was really an authority.
Yes, uh, they don't like. So, for example, I mean, I wrote this uh, study about how the climate became the major environmental issue or almost political issue. And it for me it was very very important. It was like shit. This is the thing I'm gonna get famous for. That was what I felt, and I also felt that this is dangerous because of what I found out about the roots. It was this is dangerous shit, man. This is you find military involved, and you find the Rockefeller foundations and so on, and it's like, oh shit, this is scary. But I felt I was supposed to write 5 pages. I ended up in 50 pages, and I went to my main supervisor with this work, and I felt this is really something. This is important stuff. And he just said, no, um, this is not important. You shouldn't do this. Concentrate on doing the study you should do, not this. And more or less, uh, we shouldn't have no discussion around this paper, no seminar of this paper. Just throw it in the trash bin.
No.
Uh, it's nothing to see here. And I was what? This is just very very important. And it and the thing is, I wrote about European biofuel policy. So that was the topic. But climate was the part of it that made the European Union wanted to we have to have biofuels to save the climate. So for me, it was very important. This was the background to everything. And I also wrote about the actors involved, the networks involved in forming policy on a European level, and found the connections from United States to European Union and through London, Chatham House, very important power center. So it was very integrated, and I could follow this. But it was like, don't look at that. They wanted me to look on the debate. Uh, a discourse analysis. Look on these two sides.
Mm.
What are they saying? And I wanted to know the logic behind what they were saying. Who pays who? Where's the funding coming from? And find all that was the interesting thing. So and also I presented this paper to another professor, but also that said, okay, it's a good interesting analysis, but then talked about I had she said I had a students who wanted to do a study about the military industrial complex. You can do that, and so it's okay. So it's a kind of good work, but don't do that. Go this way. And it was very apparent that you, and she also said, I had done a critical paper together with another student about the pharmaceutical industry. And it was also no, this is biased, you know. So it was apparent you couldn't criticize these things. At the same time, this was very much about critical theory. So the whole perspective at this department I was at was very this postmodern critical analysis. But it's like you couldn't be critical against your own the perspective they had. So.
So your study of when you've gone into this, I mean, outside of the mechanisms to get there, when you've got to the point where you understood that climate change was a lie, what questions were opened up to you? Because you're obviously at a point where I've talked to you before about your work on globalism, globalist infrastructure, who's in charge of what to that extent.
Yeah.
Was that a direct consequence? Was that just, oh, everything's a lie over here, who's funding it? And then you're looking at the system as a whole. Is that what you study now more than climate change stuff, or what?
Yes, I mean it began with the climate and also doing this kind of policy studies, this actor network studies. So that's the method I used doing the PhD study. And so yes, of course, it started with climate. I wanted to know who's behind, and then I found that the same actors were involved globally in other issues that were all pointing in the same direction. It was we have to have global management and control, and the same. I mean, the same. That's what caught me. The same players that had built the oil-dependent economy, the global economy, they were behind the climate narrative, and that was kind of viewed as two different sides. But I found out they have the same source.
Yeah.
So of course that was very important in my understanding, and then
Wait, go on. I do want to hear. I want to understand what you where you ended up with the same source. Like, because I've gone through that same journey as well, and I've ended up back in a certain era with certain people who are around the table. Where do you think most of the source of this comes from? Basics.
well, you can go long back in history, of course, but as I write about in my latest book, Temple of Solomon, um, because I ended with after this study, it was a lot of the Rockefellers, of course, the Rockefeller philanthropies and so on, and then I wanted to know, okay, but what did this came from? it didn't start there. They have been very influential in both oil and then climate narrative. But if you go back, you find that they have been involved in other groups as well, and you find the
Lots of other groups.
yeah, lots of other. But if you go into round table movement, I think that is very important, and Cecil Rhodes' ideas and control of resources and the network that was built and the secret society that was built after his death. And these two front organizations, I mentioned Chatham House, Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the Council on Foreign Relations. And the Council on Foreign Relations was more or less run by the Rockefellers after the Second World War, and dominated during the 70s and 80s with David Rockefeller as the head of it. So that is a very, very important part of it, but you can also find other dimensions, of course. But essentially, this group of super capitalists that want to control the resources of the world.
They are definitely doing a good job of doing it at the moment. I mean, I Rockefeller is something that just comes up the name over and over again. And what you're explaining, like that, David Rockefeller is, of course, just out there within the circles of the CFR, creating groups like the Trilateral Commission, important behind raising the profile of groups like Club of Rome, involved in finance. I mean, Kissinger's International Seminar, which was like the precursor, the Young Global Leaders Program, he was behind funding parts of that, like the publications that were happening. And then when it got found out and closed down in about 1967, 1968, it got reformed in the German Marshall Fund. And when they opened that up, it was just Rockefeller and the gang turned up to the party, McCloy, all the CFR boys. Of course, Henry Kissinger's gone through the CFR through the 50s. That's where McGeorge Bundy told him to go. It's the most powerful place. And of course, Rockefeller is just everywhere.
Yeah.
Is he, I mean, between him and Kissinger, was David Rockefeller the guy who was creating or forcing policy upon nations, and Kissinger the one who working out how to implement that via subversive like routes?
I mean, Kissinger worked for Rockefellers. So I mean, David was he had this big idea of the world, but also a part of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund's Special Studies project, where they said, and with Kissinger as director. So I mean, they chose him. He was the perfect candidate. And Nelson, he gave him a lot of money during the 60s and early 70s for him to be around and for him to be working with Nixon. And Kissinger hated Nixon.
Yeah, and Nelson Rockefeller announced, he said, 3 times we tried to get our man in the White House, and this time we succeeded with Kissinger.
Yeah. And eventually Nelson himself was a vice president. So it's a very, very interesting story. When I actually wrote the Rockefeller book, and I wanted to know the background to these people and how they were thinking and why. So Rockefellers were, I mean, Kissinger were working for them.
And that's just post World War II. If you go back further, I mean, I've released an article about kind of looks at the 1910-11 plague in Manchuria, it was described as, which was a pneumonic plague that was spreading around in Manchuria, and it was the first international medical symposium to be held in China.
Yeah.
And the Americans, when they wanted to send someone, they went to the person who was in the government went to Rockefellers, said, "Hey, even in this is like 1910, and they're already the first people you call. Who are we going to put in?" And it was this guy, Dr. Strong, who they had, who was board of health in Manila, who they had go out there. And Rockefellers have been active doing this exact same work at a high level for a long time.
Yeah.
You must have found some interesting stuff during your studies on that family.
Yes, I did. I mean, and there's a lot of stories about them. And so it was, for me, it was important to read this for myself and also have. I wanted to know how they thought about it. I mean, it's a lot of stories talking about how they are, but I also wanted to know how they perceive themselves and explained why they are doing this. And so it was very interesting to read David Rockefeller's memoirs, for example, and a lot of stuff, and also about Lawrence Rockefeller and their own thinking in their own words, what they wanted to achieve.
Didn't you say out loud that depopulation was necessary?
Well, David Rockefeller said this, has said this on a couple of occasions. I think that that's the big one of the biggest issues with population. And I mean, they started out with this very early, and David's brother John D. Rockefeller the third. I mean, he started the Population Council, and he also was. And the Population Council, at the first meeting, they had an oceanographer with them on that meeting. That was Roger Revelle, and Roger Revelle is known as the grandfather of global warming theory during the 50s. So it has also been connected the this idea of population control, and you can say that they haven't succeeded in managing the numbers yet, because at that time in the early 50s we had like 3 billion people, and now we are 7 billion. So, but we, on the other hand, we don't know how many we had been.
Yeah, maybe we
If not, for these policies, but these ideas has always been there and been very important. When I did the study, it was about Rockefeller Brothers Fund in the 50s. It was about the control of resources and the control of population. That's the main things, and control of resources, that has a lot to do with the climate change agenda.
Yeah,
Energy and
it allows them. It's a tool. The climate
yeah,
change is a tool to get what they want.
and the control of population, you have a lot to do with the health agenda. It comes into that with so it's very, they have been very they had their vision very clear for themselves and worked for it continuously through the decades. And also when we had the five brothers, they were very influential, especially not so much Winthrop Rockefeller, even though he became a governor of Arkansas. But the other brothers were very globally oriented and were running a lot, especially David, a lot of organizations and
Yeah, a lot.
trilaterals, as you said.
Almost like he bred organizations that bred organizations, and it led to really. If anybody was watching how the Rockefellers did anything, if they had any on anything, how these policy institutes work, they basically it started creating non-governmental development organizations to create non-governmental organizations. It just becomes an organization that creates more organizations that create more organizations, and then kind of suited them to populate a load of these organizations, relevant organizations or relative organizations, by neocons as well. These people who could flip morally and ethically to
Yeah.
the side of the political spectrum to get what they want done. And it's an amazing. I myself am having an amazing journey studying the history, this rise, all of these different people. I mean, you've got a load of knowledge that I don't have. I probably got a load of details you don't have, and it's like we each go in our own journey to understand. If you could give a fairly comprehensive and brief explanation to how globalism has formed and the main points of it from, say, World War II to now, and how powerful it was at the start and how powerful it is now, how much sway it has. Is there a way to do that?
Well, I usually what I've written in the Rockefeller book. That is how the thinking was in the 50s, because I mean they had, in the end of the Second World War, United Nations ready as an organization, and they tried to make this a world government. Or we had these organizations, World Federalists, wanted to make it, but then it didn't succeed. Instead, we got the Cold War with two sides fighting. But we know from these sources that the end game was to fuse these two systems. Like we have had the Rees Commission, and Edward Griffin has talked a lot about it, and how we wanted to create this global management system based on American industrial efficiency, but with kind of almost communistic ideas as well, combining this. So that they had all this was have thought of when the United Nations was formed, and then they had to wanted to find a way to make United Nations get more power to United Nations, make it grow, have more areas for United Nations to work with. And this was one of we of course had the atomic bomb. That was the first thing. And then in the 50s they started in the Rockefeller Brothers Fund with the special studies project, discussing areas to work with that demanded international cooperation, and that was climate and health, but also the economy. So I mean that has been a very so we have had this in the scientific field, but of course, and then we have economy with that out of came the neoliberal policies that started to influence from the 70s and onwards, and with and also with working with China, as the Rockefellers did. They had started with this very early on, already when the Rockefeller Foundation was founded. China was kind of the first country, and then starting with China and opening up China, giving China the everything they needed to become the engine of the world. And David was there, Kissinger was there. The Chinese got a bank account at the Chase Manhattan Bank, and this created this, and then we had this the oil crisis that was the first part of ending the kind of old Second World Order into a new, and that created incentives for European and American industry to move to these other areas all over the world, and using cheaper labor. And then the neoliberal revolution during the 80s with Thatcher and Reagan, and then we came to the 90s again, and that's never the next death blow to industry in the West. And as I said, I had to go to the university because of this. No jobs anymore. Everything had moved to these other countries like China, and then this globalistic outlook has been also, we have other things working for it, with international terrorism introduced with 9/11. And I also have, and it's interesting to follow with something called the Great Transition. I don't know if I have discussed this with you. Have I?
Maybe. Go on, explain it.
So it was the Rockefeller Foundation, and especially Stephen Rockefeller involved in this, a big project on how to achieve the desired goal with world authority, a planetary society. And they started with this after the big environmental meetings, because that's of course another big thing with the process of globalization. The big environmental meetings, we have economy and then we have the environment, and we had these meetings, and after the Rio meeting in 92, the year before the trilaterals, they had published this report, Beyond Interdependence, for measuring the world's economy and ecology. And they started a project right after this that resulted in the Great Transition Initiative. And with the new Sustainable Development Doctrine decided in Rio, built on Brundtland Commission, they make scenarios on the future, kind of. You have kind of different ways to get to this point, this omega point, this stage where we have a world constitution and kind of a world government, and we talk about this, and it's a utopian way.
It always is until it isn't.
Yeah, it is. It's sold in that way. Everybody is lucky in this future utopia. If you look on the picture of the Great Transition, it's like looking into Jehovah's Witnesses or Soviet propaganda, and that's what we will get. But to get there, we have to go through phases, and this is the crisis. And that starts a lot with 9/11. And then we have had these big things happening that's breakdowns the old order to get us into the reform area. So we have had 9/11, the great financial crisis, the refugee crisis, the plastic crisis, and COVID, of course. And they talk about in this report released in 2002 that a pandemic could be the big trigger for this reform era, or so they have planned to introduce a lot of things, and also this came with after this report was released with the Rockefeller Foundation again with scenarios for future technology and development, and so now we are more or less in the middle of it.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of globalism rolling out, but it seems to be that people don't realize we're in the middle. They think we're still at the beginning, and it hasn't been the infrastructure hasn't been created, etc. But the infrastructure is quite far advanced.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is.
What do you so we got to now? What do you think that means for the very near future and the future? Does that mean is globalism inevitable? Because for me, I can be, an anti-globalist. I can write to expose what they're doing, but it doesn't seem to stop what they're doing. Is globalism inevitable?
I think it's as inevitable as I mean the British Empire becoming this global empire, the Roman Empire becoming what it was, all the empires of the world. They, as long as they have this goal to get this authority, they are so into it. They get all resources go to it, and then they achieve it, and that's when everything is starting to fall apart.
Ah,
And that's yeah, that's so yeah. Don't think we can stop this before, uh, because it's like we have to do it, and they are so convinced that it will be great. But at the same time, when they have it, it's like, okay, what do we do now? Now we have to defend this. Now we have
we
to
have to find
keep
the
it
enemy.
now, and it takes a lot of energy to do this, and it has failed every time
That's
with an
interesting.
empire.
I find it very interesting that I think I see the obvious route that they're going to take to try and keep everything together as they form it is space. I think this is
Yeah.
what Elon Musk and others are there to do. They're there to build the infrastructure that makes it look like. I mean, if you listened to him 2 years ago, he's basically promising people are going to go to Mars in 5 years
Yeah.
and this sort of stuff. And in 5 years' time, he'll be promising the moon. And in 5 years' time, he'll be promising the moon, and so on.
Yeah,
And he'll
exactly.
keep promising the moon until he's old and no one likes him anymore, and a new guy will come up and start promising you the moon. So it's obviously a cycle that isn't gonna. Is it gonna be enough? This idea, this like one thing about advancing humanity, and isn't it likely to be something from our experience that they're going to fake it more than they're going to succeed in doing it?
Yes, that's not that could be the thing. I think uh, it becomes so important to prove that their plans are succeeding. So eventually, we have to fake it. It has happened before.
Yeah.
And now they have it's easy to fake things today.
Yeah,
So
very easy, and it's
yeah.
getting easier. I mean, it seems like they're developing the technology to fake things much quicker than they're developing the technology to do things.
Yeah.
Oh, never thought of it like that before. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you. What I think you're kind of predicting is the rise of globalism, a peak to globalism, and the fall of globalism.
Yeah.
So, and I think they probably would have mapped out some of this as well. I suppose it comes down to we're entering a stage of what will be multipolar globalism. Then we'll have globalist empire, and then we'll be back to multipolar globalism again. Is that likely to what the future holds for our ancestors?
Yeah, I think we will enter a kind of a breakdown scenario eventually, and because it's impossible to hold this together in the long run. I mean, if we go back to history, it's what has it has been, and I mean, many authors and scholars have been pointing at these facts, and but now it's like if we try again, we will succeed this time.
You can make 70%, you can force your opinion and your will upon 70% of the people, but that 30% will wait until those 70% are sleeping and go and sort it out.
Yeah.
The fact is humanity does rise up again. I do agree with that. I think that's quite an optimistic view. For lots of people, it doesn't sound optimistic because there's probably 100 years that passes around there as well. And by that time, technology is we risk doing stuff to ourselves. So the question is, if we're being optimistic and saying we'll survive at least the first attempt of globalization, will humanity still exist as humanity by that time?
Yes, I think that, and I have been written about this in my books, in the end of the books, that I think we as a human family has, it's like we have a protective force. We have, and if we are threatened as a species, it's something awakens within us, kind of a defense shield mechanism, and bringing together people. And it's like a force that is, I mean, they're trying to build this technological machinery that can bring together people, and we can use this, of course, but I think we have something else that is outside this technological that brings us together, and that we find the right people. And I don't think that it's like thinking that the avatars of a computer game will succeed in trying to destroy their creator and make their own universe. I don't think that it will work. I think we are part of something much bigger that will prevent this from happening. It's like it's a built-in code in the system. So you can't destroy the system.
That's a good
Yeah.
way to put it. Because I feel the same way. I feel that if you get down to the thought, if you just take the route, you don't have to believe it, but just take the route down where simulation and simulation and simulation and simulation. What is the chances that we know more than the people or the creatures that have created such a simulation, or the God that created,
Yeah.
or the world and that works both secular and non-secular if you which
Yeah. Yeah.
um okay, you've got the last like 10 minutes or so of this. you
Yeah.
you showed me a book that you have. Show it to me, because the cover is so beautiful. That's it. Yeah, it's beautiful. It looks like one of those books that if I saw, I'd want to own. So you've done such a good job. What is going on that cover? What's the book called? And what's it about?
It's called Temple of Solomon, and on the book it's gold foliated,
Mhm.
and it's a seal of the archangels on the front. And I have was a vision I had to make this book, and this is actually the most exclusive uh, booklet in the world for a music CD. Here's the music CD. It's by my band, Wardenclyffe, metal band. And so this book has chapters about each of the songs on this album. And it tells a story about, and it goes back to it first starts with Hal. It is, Hal from the movie
I'm sorry,
2001.
I can't do that thing.
Yeah, and the rise of
It
artificial
haunts my
intelligence.
dreams.
Yeah, yeah. The rise of artificial intelligence, you could say, and yeah, you have Hal.
Oh
And
God.
then I go
Get him off.
into history with Dr. John Dee, with the idea to get knowledge from the angels or the angels, what it was, in order to construct and build the perfect society. So I tackle a lot of kind of Rosicrucianism, and also Freemasonry, of course, and these utopian ideas to use science to create the better world, or heaven on earth,
Mm.
or perfecting what God left undone. So it's a esoteric history. I go into the Lucis Trust and Alice Bailey,
You go
Blavatsky,
back to a
and
bit of the Invisible College and stuff and like that.
yeah, what?
The Invisible College, was it?
Yeah, with Francis Bacon, of course, and these visions of the new Atlantis, and doing this society run by scientists. So it's
I take it you've talked to Courtney Turner, yeah?
yeah,
Have you
yeah.
talked to Courtney Turner? Yeah, she's.
No, Courtney Turner, no.
Oh, you should definitely. I will
Yeah.
introduce you to Courtney Turner. She
Okay.
is just so into this that it's one of her favorite things. Like what you
Yeah.
just mentioned there would just excite her a lot. That she'd get to read this. I'm pretty positive she'd bookmark your work heavily.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this goes from the years of John Dee in the 1500s, and then it talks about the reconstruction of the temple, the Temple of Solomon, but not the physical temple in Jerusalem, even though that is kind of part of it as well. But behind the temple, you have the false temple, the technological temple, and the Temple of Solomon refers to a professor called Professor Oliver Reiser, that wrote a couple of books, Cosmic Humanism and World Unity, with a proposal of development of a technological satellite temple. The one that is actually helped constructed with Elon Musk today. And a lot of this book was released in the mid 70s, but it presents a plan on how to build this artificial temple, and I had to write a song about it. So that
I'm not.
became the title song of this, and also and then I go into also how things has to do me with Elon Musk's Neuralink, and connecting us, making us a part of a machine, and but also how we can defeat this, and also the techniques that these people use against us. So that's a chapter and a song about, and also in the end I have this Hollywood ending with actually a song about love, but kind of a love that is you could say agape in Greek, with that is the love, more divine love, and that binds us together in when we are threatened. And I have given a personal account on how I found a lot of things during my journey, and finding people during my journey that makes me convinced that we have something that works for us, and will make us succeed and win in the end. for this time, because I also think that this has been continuing. We have had a lot of towers of Babels constructed before in history.
Cycles of baby.
So it's like it's gonna continue exactly as life do.
Yeah.
We live and die, and nature live and die. We have the seasons and the spring and summer and the autumn and winter, and everything dies and then it grows again, comes back, and so I think that's just the natural thing.
Mm.
Mm.
I like
And we just have to, as humans, we just have to try to live this. We are part of it. So
By the time we get to the end of our lives, everything's completely changed. All the rules have changed, and it's time for the next generation to surf that as well. And
yeah,
it's not like we can keep anything static. The idea that we can keep anything static would be too much.
yeah,
We don't.
it is.
Just because we can keep things static doesn't mean we should give ourselves over to people who have nightmarish visions that will make our
No.
worse. And it's a positive picture you paint there as well. Hey, so where can people buy that book?
Well, this can only be bought from my web store,
Ah,
farosmedia.se.
go on, say it again.
farosmedia.se.
Okay, it'll
And
be in the link in the
that is Faros with Pharos, Faros Media, after the lighthouse in Alexandria.
Yes.
So, and you get a signed copy, numbered from. This is number 1. That's my personal copy, but it's done in 777 copies.
Oh wow! Oh, who's got number 666? Whoo!
Hasn't been sold yet.
That's dangerous.
Well, I'm up. I think it's like 450 copies sold.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking book, that's for sure. And that always entices me with books.
Yeah.
If it's meaty, I can really hold it in my hand and it shines at me. It just, I mean, it's just beautiful, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it looks like it's got fantastic illustrations in with the music combined. That's right up my. I'm lifelong, or to an extent, lifelong. Started playing guitar and singing in a rock band when I was like 16, 15, 16, going on 17, and then it was just all my life, all of the time. And I've always written up the music for all of my stuff, or I've created stuff. I kind of incorporated, but I also have that same sort of feeling I think you've got, which I connected with him many times when you were speaking about music and doing music in the past. Is that, you know, I never really we tried, we pushed out a load of mixtapes, did a load of records, we did an album, I'd done a few albums and etc., but I've never really seen it as like I expect people to indulge in that, or I want to promote it as a business. I had to create the music.
Yeah.
It was, those were the songs I'd written, those were the songs that had come to me. I had to record them all down and kind of get them out of the way to an extent, and so I could get on with a lot of other stuff. But then I've always incorporated music into my, so I got a lot of love for that connection between music and art in general, especially when it comes to writing and research like this. And you do fantastic work. What's your website? Well, how can people find you online? Because that's how most people do these things nowadays.
Yes, I have a website, jacobnordangård.se, and you can find it in first in Swedish, but you can find also English, and I have links to my Substack there and YouTube, and I'm also at X and can find me on Facebook as well. So I'm at social media, and it's easy to follow. And but Substack is a good way to find out what I've been my latest work and what I'm writing, and I also present came up with newsletters about what I'm doing when I have lectures and so on. So it's can be good to if you're interested.
Substack's pretty it seems pretty good. I mean, it's a place where people can actually go and write and promote their work and not be bothered by the establishment, it seems. I mean, I've not seen.
Yeah, and actually get some earnings from it, because that's before I had a blog. Nobody pays for a blog. But this is very good for an author to have Substack, because some people will pay a bit just to to support. So it's I think it's one of the best inventions.
At the moment, I would say that, and it's really easy to use as well. So it's really useful for transferring work across too. And I will put all of those links in the description. Hey, it's been brilliant to talk to you. I hope I can convince you to come on and do a live show eventually too. And maybe there's a couple other shows in the work I got going on. I'd love to make sure I promote your not only your work but your point of view across, because I think you're very pragmatic, very sensible. You're principled, and you're ethical and moral, and all of those things that I enjoy. I like, and I want to foster in other people too. So anytime you got anything that you want to reach out, just do so. All right.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. Yeah.
Great
honor. Yeah.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed